The CEO of Grant Corporation has a secret. He's only afraid of one thing: chaos. To him, absolute order is the only way to prevent betrayal. He has built a perfect fortress around his heart. And then, the poor Maid girl accidentally entered that fortress without knowing. Are you curious where this story will go? Me too. In the meantime, can you tell me what time it is where you are? Like and leave a comment. ! In the heart of New York City, high above the bustling streets, Harry Grant's penthouse stood as a fortress of precision. Every surface gleamed under the cool, unforgiving light of recessed LEDs. Marble countertops aligned perfectly, bookshelves where spines formed flawless rows. Not a single item dared to stray from its assigned spot. It was a space that screamed control, yet whispered emptiness. "Mrs. Ellis," he said evenly, pointing to the coffee table. "That book is out of place. It belongs on the third shelf, second from the left." Harry stepped into the living room that morning, his sharp eyes scanning the room like a hawk. There she was, the housekeeper. A woman in her 50s, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, a slight tremor betraying her nerves. She stammered an apology, something about dusting and forgetting, but Harry was already pulling out his phone. He dialed his assistant without a second glance. "Find me a new housekeeper. Effective immediately." As she gathered her things and headed for the door, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor, Harry watched her go. No pity stirred in him. For him, rules were rules. At 34, Harry Grant was the epitome of self-made success. Founder and CEO of Grant Industries, he'd built an empire from nothing. His tall frame always clad in bespoke suits that hugged his athletic build without a wrinkle. His angular face, framed by neatly trimmed dark hair, held eyes of piercing blue, cold, distant, like a frozen lake. He moved through life with the confidence of a man who had everything under control. But as the door clicked shut behind Mrs. Ellis, Harry felt the vast silence of the penthouse settle around him. He straightened a cushion that didn't need it, his mind drifting to the past. Order was his armor, the only thing that kept chaos at bay. Chaos like the betrayal that had gutted him years ago, leaving scars he buried deep. Emotions? They were weaknesses, cracks where hurt could seep in. He'd paid dearly to learn that lesson. Better to be alone in this sterile kingdom than risk it all again. Yet, in the quiet, a faint unease tugged at him. The penthouse felt larger than ever, its perfection a hollow echo. Harry turned to his desk, pushing the thought aside. Work waited, as it always did. Across town, in a cozy Brooklyn apartment where sunlight streamed through mismatched curtains, the air carried the sweet scent of vanilla cookies baking in the oven. Toys scattered the living room floor like colorful confetti, blocks here, a stuffed bear there. Books piled in a haphazard tower that somehow never toppled. It wasn't chaos. It was the warm mess of a life built on love, filled with the giggles of a little girl echoing off the walls. Bella, 3 years old and full of boundless energy, tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, play with me? This puzzle has a unicorn." Olivia Perry balanced on the edge of the couch, her honey blonde hair escaping its loose bun in soft curls that framed her face. She moved with a quiet grace, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners as she watched her daughter. Olivia smiled. "In 30 minutes, sweetie, Mommy's got to finish this first." One hand scooped up stray Lego pieces from the carpet, stacking them neatly in a bin, while the other scrolled on her battered laptop. Bills loomed, and the freelance gigs weren't cutting it anymore. She needed something steady. Then, a job listing caught her eye. Personal housekeeper for a high-profile executive. Demands leaped off the screen. Absolute precision, strict adherence to rules, no deviations. The salary made her pause, heart skipping a beat. It was more than she'd seen in months. Enough to cover daycare, maybe even save for Bella's future. But those requirements? They screamed control freak. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the apply button. Could she handle that kind of rigidity? For Bella, though, she'd face anything. Her husband had been gone since a car accident 5 months into her pregnancy, leaving her to navigate motherhood alone. No family nearby, just her and this little firecracker who made every struggle worth it. She clicked submit, a small act of defiance against the odds. As Bella hummed a made-up song, twirling in her polka-dot dress, Olivia felt a surge of quiet strength. Life hadn't been fair, but she didn't waste time on bitterness. What mattered was the resilience she discovered in herself, the kindness that kept her going. She didn't dream of fairy tales or rescues. A solid job, a safe home, that was enough to build a real future. Watching Bella's joy, she knew she'd move mountains if needed. This application? Just one more step forward. Olivia stepped into the elevator of the towering building, her heart steady despite the knot in her stomach. The ride up felt endless, the mirrored walls reflecting her simple blouse and skirt, practical, not flashy. She smoothed a stray curl, reminding herself this was just another hurdle. For Bella, she'd walk through fire. The doors opened to Harry's home office, a space even starker than she'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but the room itself was a study in minimalism. Sleek black furniture, not a paper out of place. The air crisp and scentless, like a showroom no one lived in. Harry sat behind a massive oak desk, his posture rigid, those blue eyes locking onto her the moment she entered. He didn't stand or offer a hand. Instead, he gestured to the chair opposite him with a curt nod. "Miss Perry," he began, his voice smooth but edged, like polished steel. "You've applied for a position that demands perfection. Tell me, why should I trust you won't disrupt my routines like the others?" She sat straight, meeting his gaze without flinching. Inside, she noted the tension in his jaw, the way he gripped his pen a touch too tightly. "Because routines are tools, Mr. Grant, not chains. I've managed a household on my own for years, balancing chaos with care. I adapt without breaking what's essential." He leaned forward slightly, probing deeper, his questions coming fast and sharp. "How do you handle errors? What if a task isn't completed to exact specifications? Give me an example from your past work." Olivia paused, not out of hesitation, but to choose her words. "Errors happen. They're human. In my last role at a catering company, a mix-up with orders nearly derailed an event. I fixed it by reorganizing on the spot, turning a potential disaster into a smoother flow. No one noticed the glitch because I focused on the outcome, not the blame." Harry's brow furrowed just a fraction. He'd expected her to falter, to apologize preemptively. Instead, she held her ground. He shifted tactics. "This job isn't about creativity. It's about adherence. My home runs on precision. Can you follow rules without question?" A small smile tugged at her lips. "Rules have their place, but blind obedience? That's for machines. I'm human, and that means bringing efficiency with empathy. Look at that painting behind you, the abstract one with the swirling blues. It's the only thing in here that breaks the symmetry. Maybe even you appreciate a little controlled chaos." He glanced back at the artwork, a piece he'd chosen precisely because it mirrored his inner restraint. No one had ever commented on it. Assistants averted their eyes. Her observation hit like a subtle jab, revealing she'd seen more than the surface. Irritation flickered in him. How dare she read the room so well? Yet, beneath it, a spark of intrigue. She wasn't crumbling. She was challenging him, subtly. For a moment, silence hung between them. Harry couldn't quite pin her down. She didn't fit the mold of the timid applicants before. Part of him wanted to dismiss her, restore order, but another part, buried deep, sensed she might bring something his sterile world lacked. "Fine," he said at last, sliding a document across the desk. "A 2-week trial contract. Survive my rules, prove your worth, and the job's yours. Fail, and you're out. No second chances." Olivia scanned the page, noting the exhaustive list of protocols. It was absurd, almost comical in its detail. But the pay, and the stability. She shrugged lightly, signing with a steady hand. "Deal. I like a good challenge." As she left, Harry watched her retreating figure, a mix of annoyance and reluctant respect stirring. She was tough, unflappable, intriguing. Olivia, stepping back into the elevator, exhaled slowly. He was arrogant, yes, but there was a vulnerability in his control, like armor hiding cracks. This could be interesting, or a total nightmare. Either way, she'd face it head-on. Harry returned home that evening earlier than usual, the weight of a long board meeting still clinging to his shoulders like an unwelcome shadow. He loosened his tie as he headed straight for the kitchen, craving the simple ritual of his evening espresso. Precisely measured, brewed in silence. The penthouse felt subtly different these past few days, since Olivia started her trial. Not wrong exactly, but off-kilter. He pushed the thought aside, expecting the familiar order to ground him. But as he flicked on the lights, his world tilted. The kitchen, once a model of efficiency, with cabinets labeled and contents alphabetized, basil before cumin, forks before knives, now looked invaded. Spices clustered by flavor profile, herbs in one drawer, baking essentials in another. Utensils hung by function, whisks near the mixer, spatulas by the stove. Even the pantry shelves had shifted, with everyday items at eye level instead of sorted by expiration date. It was logical in a way, but not his logic. His pulse quickened, a rare flare of disorder rattling his composure. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, more to himself than anything, as he yanked open a cabinet. Olivia turned from the counter where she was chopping vegetables, her apron dusted with flour, a strand of hair falling across her forehead. She didn't startle. Instead, she wiped her hands calmly and met his stare. "Mr. Grant," she said evenly, "I reorganized a bit. Makes cooking flow better. Trust me, it'll save time." He stepped closer, gesturing sharply at the spice rack. This was alphabetical. Precise. Now it's, what, a free-for-all? His voice stayed level, but irritation seeped through. Control was his lifeline. This felt like a breach, a small crack in the fortress he'd built. Memories flickered unbidden, his father's erratic business deals, the family home always in flux, teaching him early that order equaled safety. Olivia didn't back down. She pulled out a drawer, demonstrating with a fluid motion. "See? Savory spices here for quick grabs during dinner prep. Sweets over there, away from the heat. It's not random. It's practical. Last night, when I made that stir-fry you barely touched, I wasted minutes hunting for things. This way, everything's intuitive." He crossed his arms, unwilling to concede. "Intuitive for you, maybe, but I have systems for a reason. They work." She raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement softening her features. "Do they?" "Let me prove it." Without waiting, she set a timer on her phone and challenged him to find ingredients for a basic omelet, his usual breakfast staple, using the old mental map. He fumbled slightly, reaching for where eggs should be, only to find oils instead. 30 seconds ticked by awkwardly. Then she switched, gliding through the new setup. Eggs from the front fridge shelf, cheese from the dairy bin, herbs snatched in seconds. The timer beeped at half the time. Harry stared at the counter, the evidence undeniable. A reluctant chuckle escaped him, surprising even himself. It wasn't defeat, it was refreshing? No one had ever pushed back like this, not with logic that held water. Fine, he admitted, the word tasting foreign. It might be more efficient. But next time, ask before you overhaul my kitchen. Olivia nodded, her warm eyes holding a spark of victory without gloating. Deal. But admit it, sometimes a fresh perspective shakes things up for the better. As she resumed chopping, the kitchen filled with the rhythmic sound of the knife, a scent of fresh garlic wafting up. Harry lingered a moment longer than necessary, watching her ease. For the first time, his space didn't feel quite so empty. It irked him, this intrusion, but beneath the annoyance stirred something else, a quiet acknowledgement that his ironclad world might have room for another viewpoint. He poured his espresso, the machine humming familiarly, yet the brew tasted a touch warmer tonight. That small concession lingered in his mind as he retreated to his office. Olivia's changes weren't just about shelves. They hinted at efficiencies he'd overlooked in his rigid pursuit of perfection. He sipped his coffee, staring at the city lights below. Part of him resented how effortlessly she dismantled his norms, but another part wondered what else she might rearrange, if he'd let her. The penthouse, once a silent vault, now carried faint echoes of life. It unsettled him, yet he didn't entirely hate it. Over the next few days, he caught himself reaching for items in her new spots without thinking. The flow indeed smoother. During a late-night work session, he wandered back to the kitchen for a snack and found a plate of leftover pasta she'd prepared earlier. Simple, but flavorful in a way his catered meals never were. He ate, standing at the counter, the taste evoking a long-forgotten comfort. Olivia had gone home hours ago, but her presence lingered, challenging his solitude. Harry set the plate down, rinsing it methodically. Admitting she was right stung his pride, but it also cracked open a door he'd long kept bolted. In his world of mergers and acquisitions, victories were clear-cut. This felt messier, more human. He turned off the light, the kitchen settling into quiet order, not his alone anymore. For a man who'd mastered control, this shift was both infuriating and oddly liberating. He headed to bed, the day's events replaying, her confident demo etched in his thoughts. Maybe, just maybe, there was logic beyond his own. A few days into Olivia's trial, the penthouse's usual hush was shattered in a way Harry never anticipated. He was in his study, poring over quarterly reports, the kind of work that demanded absolute quiet. That's when it hit him. A peal of laughter, light and unbridled, drifting from the living area like a melody from another world. It was a child's laugh, pure and infectious, followed by a softer, warmer voice responding in playful tones. Harry froze, his pen hovering mid-signature. Children weren't part of his equation. The contract had mentioned Bella in passing, but he'd assumed she'd stay out of sight, perhaps at daycare or confined to some corner. This sound pierced his carefully curated silence, stirring something unfamiliar. Irritation first, how dare it disrupt his focus? But beneath that, a pull he couldn't ignore. He set the papers down and moved quietly toward the door, peering through the slight crack. There, in the expansive living room that had always felt more like a display case than a home, Olivia knelt on the rug with Bella. Toys were scattered in a joyful array, a tea set, stuffed animals arranged in a circle. Bella, with her curly pigtails bouncing, held up a plastic cup. "Tea for you, Mommy." "It's magic tea." Olivia accepted it with exaggerated delight, sipping dramatically. This is the best magic tea ever. It tastes like adventure. Her laughter joined Bella's, the two of them lost in their game, the room alive with warmth that made the sleek furniture seem almost inviting. From his vantage point, Harry watched, unseen. He'd grown up in a house where laughter was rare, overshadowed by his parents' endless arguments and eventual abandonment. Family to him was a myth, messy, unreliable. Yet here it was, unfolding in his own space, a mother and daughter bonded in simple joy. Olivia's face softened in a way he'd never seen, her usual poise giving way to genuine tenderness as she tucked a curl behind Bella's ear. A pang hit him, sharp and unexpected. It wasn't envy exactly, but a hollow ache for something he'd long dismissed as unnecessary. His life was efficient, successful. Why did this scene tug at him? The laughter faded into giggles as Bella tackled Olivia in a hug, and Harry stepped back, retreating to his desk. But the echo lingered, chipping at his resolve. That evening, as Olivia gathered Bella's things to head home, Harry found himself lingering in the hallway. The penthouse felt quieter now, but not in the comforting way it once had. It was empty, stark. He caught a glimpse of Bella waving a toy goodbye to the room, and for a split second he wondered what it might be like to have that energy here more often. The thought unsettled him. Vulnerability wasn't his style. Yet as the door closed behind them, the silence pressed heavier, a reminder that his perfect order might be missing the chaos of real life. He poured a drink, staring out at the city, the child's laugh replaying in his mind like a distant call to something more. As the days blurred into the second week of her trial, Olivia began testing the boundaries in small, clever ways. Nothing overt, just gentle nudges against Harry's ironclad rules. It started one morning when she overheard him on a call, mentioning in passing a childhood memory of his grandmother's apple pancakes, the kind with cinnamon that filled the house with warmth. His voice had softened for a split second, a rare crack in his facade, before he snapped back to business. She filed it away, sensing it as a thread to pull. Instead of his usual protein shake, precise measurements listed in the daily menu, she prepared those pancakes, stacking them golden and fluffy on a plate, a light dusting of powdered sugar like fresh snow. The scent wafted through the penthouse, sweet and inviting, clashing with the usual sterile air. Harry entered the kitchen, briefcase in hand, and stopped short. His routine was sacred. Deviations weren't tolerated. "This isn't on the schedule," he said, his tone clipped, though his eyes lingered on the steam rising. Olivia turned from the stove, wiping her hands. "Thought you'd appreciate a change." Sometimes the body craves what the mind forgets. She didn't push, just set the plate down and busied herself with coffee. He opened his mouth to correct her, to demand adherence, but the aroma tugged at something buried deep, lazy Sundays long gone, before life turned sharp and solitary. He sat, fork in hand, and took a bite. The flavors hit like a quiet revelation, softening the edges of his morning. No reprimand came. Instead, he finished the plate in silence, the unexpected comfort lingering as he left for work. Later that afternoon, while tidying his office, she placed a simple vase of fresh daisies on his desk, wild and unassuming, their yellow centers bright against the dark wood. Flowers weren't in the protocol. They wilted, made mess. Harry returned to find them there, a splash of life in his monochromatic space. Irritation flared. He reached to remove them, but paused. The petals caught the light, reminding him of fields he'd run through as a boy, before control became his shield. He left them, working late into the evening, occasionally glancing up, the subtle fragrance easing the knot in his chest. These small rebellions continued. A folded blanket on the couch for late nights. A playlist of soft jazz cued on the sound system instead of silence. Each time Harry felt the pull to enforce order, his mind racing to past betrayals where leniency led to loss. Yet he held back, surprised by how these intrusions didn't unravel him. Instead, they sparked anticipation, a quiet thrill wondering what she'd shift next. The penthouse, once a vault, began to breathe. He caught himself smiling faintly at the changes, a warmth creeping in despite himself. Olivia's touches weren't chaos. They were invitations to something fuller. And for the first time, he didn't entirely resist. One late night bled into the next as Harry pushed through another marathon of calls and contracts, his office lit only by the glow of screens. He'd ignored the headache building for days, dismissing it as stress. Nothing a strong coffee couldn't fix. But by dawn, the fever hit hard, turning his iron will to jelly. He staggered to his bedroom, collapsing onto the bed fully clothed, sweat beading on his forehead. For the first time in years, control slipped away. His body betrayed him, leaving him vulnerable in the vast emptiness of his own home. Olivia arrived that morning as usual, sensing something off the moment she stepped in. The lights still on. No sign of his precise morning routine. She found him in bed, cheeks flushed, breathing ragged. No panic stirred in her. She'd nursed her husband through illnesses before, knew the drill. Without a word, she fetched a thermometer from the bathroom cabinet, stocked to perfection, of course, and placed it under his tongue. 102, she murmured, frowning. You're staying put. Harry mumbled a protest, trying to sit up, his voice weak. I have meetings. Can't afford. But she pressed him back gently, her touch firm yet kind, no pity in her eyes, just practical resolve. Meetings can wait. You can't run an empire if you're flat on your back. She canceled his schedule via his assistant's line, then headed to the kitchen, whipping up a simple porridge with hints of ginger and honey, comforting, easy on the stomach. As she spoon-fed him small bites, insisting he eat despite his groans, Harry's defenses crumbled further. In the haze of fever, fragments of the past surfaced. He tossed fitfully, whispering a name, Elena, over and over, his face twisting in pain. It wasn't anger in his voice, but raw hurt, like a wound reopened. Olivia paused, wiping his brow with a cool cloth, piecing it together. Elena, perhaps the one who'd shattered his trust, the betrayal he'd armored himself against. For a moment, the billionaire facade vanished. Here was just a man, scarred and alone. His empire no shield against old ghosts. She didn't pry or soften her approach. Drink this, she said, handing him medicine mixed with water, her tone brooking no argument. He complied, too weak to fight, his blue eyes meeting hers with a flicker of gratitude amid the delirium. As he drifted back to sleep, Olivia sat nearby, watching over him. Compassion welled up, not for the tycoon, but for the human beneath, carrying burdens in silence. It humanized him, this glimpse into his cracks, making her see beyond the control freak to someone who might need connection as much as she did. By evening, his fever broke, but the moment lingered, a quiet shift in the air between them. The evening of the investor dinner arrived like a storm Harry couldn't avoid. High stakes, with board members and potential partners expecting perfection. He'd planned it meticulously. A renowned chef hired for the occasion, the penthouse transformed into an elegant venue with crystal stemware aligned just so, soft lighting casting a professional glow. This wasn't just a meal, it was a chess game, where deals worth millions hinged on impressions. But hours before guests arrived, disaster struck. His assistant called in a panic. The chef had food poisoning, out cold, no replacement available on such short notice. Harry's world narrowed to that problem, his mind racing through contingencies, but nothing stuck. Cancel? Unthinkable. His reputation for flawlessness was on the line. Pacing the living room, he glanced toward the kitchen where Olivia was prepping basics as per his earlier instructions. She wasn't a chef, just the housekeeper on trial. But he'd overheard her mention past catering experience during their interview. Desperation edged in. He had no choice. "Olivia," he said, stepping in, his voice tighter than usual. "The chef's down. Can you handle this?" She looked up from arranging platters, assessing the situation with that calm gaze of hers. No hesitation crossed her face. "I've got it. What's the menu?" He rattled off the plan: appetizers of seared scallops, mains of herb-crusted lamb, sides elegant and balanced. She nodded, already rolling up her sleeves. "Simple, but refined. We'll make it work." What followed was a whirlwind, Harry observed from the sidelines, a mix of awe and unease stirring in him. Olivia moved through the kitchen like it was her domain, her hands deft as she improvised with what was on hand. She seared the scallops to golden perfection, the sizzle filling the air with a savory promise. When a delivery of fresh herbs arrived late, she adapted seamlessly, infusing the lamb with a subtle twist of rosemary she'd tucked away. No fuss, just quiet efficiency that echoed her earlier reorganization victory. Harry hovered nearby, offering clipped suggestions, but she waved them off gently. "Trust the process," she said once, flashing a quick smile that eased his tension without him realizing it. As guests filtered in, sharp-suited executives, one particularly prickly investor named Harlan who'd grilled Harry on projections during their last meeting, the pressure mounted. Harlan arrived early, already probing with pointed questions about the company's latest venture. Harry steered the conversation, but tension simmered. Then dinner began. Olivia emerged, not as staff, but almost invisibly orchestrating, plating dishes with an artist's touch. Simple elegance that drew compliments. "This lamb is exquisite," one guest murmured, and murmurs of agreement followed. The real test came when Harlan, mid-bite, launched into a critique of the wine pairing, his voice booming, testing the room's dynamics. Harry tensed, ready to deflect, but Olivia, refilling glasses nearby, interjected smoothly. "Actually, sir, this vintage complements the herbs perfectly, cuts through the richness without overpowering. Care for a top-up?" Her tone was professional, laced with just enough warmth to disarm. Harlan paused, then chuckled, raising his glass. "Well played, you're right." The table relaxed, conversation flowing easier, deals inching forward in subtle nods and agreements. Harry watched her navigate the evening, not as a subordinate, but as an equal force, anticipating needs, diffusing tensions with grace he'd never mastered. By dessert, a light fruit tart she'd whipped up on the fly, the room buzzed with positive energy, Harlan even hinting at increased funding. As guests departed, handshakes firm and promises made, Harry felt the weight lift. The night wasn't just salvaged, it was a triumph. Alone in the quiet aftermath, he found Olivia clearing the last plates. Gratitude swelled, unfamiliar, but genuine. "You didn't just save the dinner," he admitted, leaning against the counter. "You turned it around." She shrugged modestly, but her eyes held a spark of pride. In that moment, he saw her anew, not the housekeeper challenging his rules, but a partner who'd stepped up when his fortress faltered. It shifted something in him, this reliance on her strength, hinting at a balance his solitary empire had lacked. The penthouse, still echoing faint laughter from the evening, felt less like a vault and more like a space where collaboration could thrive. As the last guest slipped out the door, the penthouse exhaled into stillness, the echoes of laughter and clinking glasses fading like distant thunder. Harry lingered in the foyer for a moment, the success of the evening settling over him, not just the sealed deals, but the way Olivia had woven through it all, turning potential chaos into seamless grace. He wandered back to the kitchen, where the counters still bore traces of the night's work. Empty platters stacked neatly, a faint aroma of herbs and wine hanging in the air. Olivia was there, wiping down the island with quiet efficiency, her movements unhurried now that the pressure had lifted. She didn't look up at first, focused on restoring order, but when he pulled out a stool and sat, she paused, meeting his gaze. No words needed. The boss-employee line had blurred hours ago, leaving them as just two people in the soft glow of under-cabinet lights. He poured 2 glasses of the leftover Cabernet, rich, deep red, and slid one her way. She accepted with a nod, perching on the opposite stool, the island a narrow bridge between them. For a while, silence wrapped around them, comfortable, yet charged, like the calm after a storm. Harry swirled his glass, staring into the wine as if it held answers. "You know," he said finally, his voice low, "when I was a kid, I dreamed of building something unbreakable. A company. A life where nothing could touch me. Thought success meant walls high enough to keep everything out." He glanced up, vulnerability flickering in his eyes, a rare admission from a man who'd armored himself against the world. Olivia set her glass down, her fingers tracing the stem thoughtfully. She'd shared so little of herself these weeks, guarding her own scars, but tonight felt different. "I get that," she replied softly. "After losing my husband, my dream shifted. It wasn't about empires, just a steady world for Bella. A place where she could laugh without worry, where I could be strong enough for both of us. Not unbreakable, maybe, but resilient." Her words hung there, simple truths bridging their divides, her warm eyes reflecting the kitchen's light. The air thickened with unspoken layers. The small rebellions she'd introduced, the vulnerabilities he'd revealed in illness, the partnership forged in crisis. Harry's chest tightened, a pull he'd fought growing insistent. He looked at her then, really looked. The way her hair caught the light, the quiet strength in her posture, the kindness that had chipped away at his isolation without demanding entry. She wasn't a disruption. She was the missing piece, turning his sterile space into something alive. Their eyes locked, time stretching in that gaze, a deep, wordless understanding blooming. No rush, no declarations, just the raw recognition of two souls seeing each other beyond roles and rules. The romantic tension that had simmered through every shared glance, every subtle challenge, crested now, unbearable yet exquisite. Harry's hand twitched, as if to reach across, but he held back, savoring the moment's fragility. Olivia felt it too, her breath catching, a flush warming her cheeks. In that quiet kitchen, amid the remnants of a triumphant night, something shifted irrevocably. Not a conquest, but a quiet alliance, promising more if they dared. The city hummed faintly beyond the windows, but here, in this locket of time, they were the only world that mattered. In the hush that followed their shared confessions, the kitchen seemed to shrink, the space between them charged with an electricity neither could ignore. Harry set his glass down, the soft clink echoing like a starting pistol. He'd spent years building barriers, rules, routines, emotional walls, to shield himself from the messiness of connection. But tonight, with the remnants of the dinner scattered around and Olivia's steady presence across from him, those walls felt brittle, ready to crumble. "You were right," he said quietly, the words slipping out unbidden, a concession that surprised even him. About the kitchen, the changes, all of it. "I thought control meant everything in its place, but you've shown me efficiency can look different. Thank you, for tonight, for stepping in when I couldn't." His voice held a sincerity he'd rarely allowed, his blue eyes locking onto hers, vulnerable in the dim light. Olivia felt the shift, her heart quickening. She'd come here for a job, not this. Not the way his gaze now held her, seeing beyond the housekeeper to the woman who'd rebuilt her life from ashes. The air thickened, The pent-up moments of the past weeks, the shared laughs over Bella's antics, his fevered vulnerability, her quiet rebellions, coalescing into something undeniable. She started to respond, a soft, "It's nothing." But the words caught as he stood, closing the distance with deliberate steps. He reached out, his hand brushing her cheek, the touch tentative at first, then firm, as years of restraint gave way. The world narrowed to that contact, the warmth of her skin under his fingers igniting a fire he'd long suppressed. Unable to hold back, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that shattered every boundary. It was passionate, urgent, a release of emotions bottled too long, his arms wrapping around her as if afraid she'd vanish. The taste of wine lingered between them, mingled with the sweetness of unspoken longing. Olivia's breath hitched in surprise, her hands instinctively rising to his chest. For a split second, doubt flickered. He was her boss, this crossed lines, but the genuineness in his embrace, the way he held her like she was the anchor he'd never known he needed, melted her reservations. She responded, her lips moving against his with equal fervor, her fingers tangling in his shirt. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a breaking point, a surrender to the connection that had been building, brick by invisible brick. Time stretched, the city lights twinkling indifferently beyond the windows, as they pulled apart just enough to breathe. Harry's forehead rested against hers, his heart pounding, a mix of exhilaration and fear washing over him. He'd broken his own rules, let emotion flood the gates, but in her arms it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like freedom. Olivia's eyes searched his, a quiet understanding passing between them. The barriers not just cracked, but dissolved, in that single transformative moment. The penthouse, once cold and unyielding, now pulsed with the promise of something real, something worth the risk. The morning light filtered through the penthouse blinds, casting sharp lines across the bed where Harry lay, his mind snapping awake like a trap. The kiss replayed in fragments, Olivia's warmth, the way he'd let go, the barriers dissolving in that heated moment. But now, in the cold clarity of dawn, panic clawed at him. His heart raced not with lingering passion, but with a familiar dread. What had he done? Control was his lifeline, the shield against the chaos that had once ripped his world apart. Elena's betrayal flashed unbidden, her smiles turning to lies, the business secrets she'd sold, leaving him exposed and shattered. Vulnerability led to ruin. He'd sworn never to repeat that mistake. He sat up abruptly, sheets tangled, sweat dampening his shirt. The penthouse felt too quiet, too exposed, as if the walls themselves whispered judgments. How could he have been so reckless? Olivia was his employee, smart, resilient, but still, this crossed every line. Emotions were variables he couldn't predict, cracks where betrayal could seep in. His empire thrived on order, one slip and it all unraveled. He paced to the window, staring at the city below, a hive of ambition where weakness got devoured. Down the hall, faint voices drifted from the service entrance. 2 staff members, early arrivals for maintenance, murmuring over coffee. Harry froze, catching snippets. Saw them last night, the housekeeper and Mr. Grant. Too close for comfort. Scandal waiting to happen with his reputation. The words hit like ice water. Gossip already? In his own home? The social pressure crashed down. Board members, investors, the relentless scrutiny of his world. A relationship like this would be dissected, twisted into leverage against him. He'd be seen as soft, distracted, ripe for exploitation. Fear twisted in his gut, old wounds throbbing, He had to act, to reclaim control before it spiraled. Rubbing his temples, he dressed quickly, the routine a feeble anchor. By the time Olivia arrived, he was in his office, composure rebuilt like a fortress wall. But inside, turmoil raged, a storm of regret and self-preservation. He couldn't let this continue. Better to sever it now, protect them both from the fallout. Yet as he heard her footsteps in the hall, a pang of loss pierced the panic. What if this was different? No, he shoved the thought down. Weakness always ended in pain. He steeled himself, ready to rebuild the barriers even if it meant pushing her away. The penthouse, alive with possibility just hours ago, now felt like a cage closing in. Olivia arrived at the penthouse that morning with a quiet hum in her step, the memory of the kiss still warm, like a secret promise tucked away. She'd replayed it through the night, the unexpected tenderness in Harry's touch, the way it had felt like a bridge between their worlds. For the first time in years since losing her husband, she'd allowed herself to imagine something more. Not a fairy tale, but a real connection, built on mutual respect. Bella had chattered about her day at preschool on the way over, and Olivia had smiled, feeling a spark of hope amid the routine struggles. But the air felt off the moment she stepped inside. The usual crisp silence carried a chill, and Harry's office door was ajar, a summons waiting. His voice came through the intercom, flat and formal. "Olivia, come to my office." Now. No warmth. No trace of the man who'd held her just hours before. Her stomach tightened, but she smoothed her apron and walked in, chin up, ready for whatever this was. Harry sat behind his desk, the picture of composure, suit impeccable, expression carved from ice. No greeting, no eye contact at first. He slid a folder across the polished surface, its contents spilling slightly. A full employment contract. A check with a figure that made her blink. Enough to cover years of worries. Daycare, a fresh start. And an NDA, thick with legal jargon. "Last night was a mistake," he said, his tone detached, like discussing a botched deal. "This ensures we keep things professional. The contract makes your position permanent. The check compensates for any inconvenience. Sign the NDA and we're square." The words landed like a slap, transforming their shared vulnerability into a transaction, cold and calculated. Olivia stared at the papers, her mind racing. This wasn't regret, it was erasure. Reducing her to a liability to be managed, her dignity bartered like stock. Memories flooded, nursing him through fever, saving his dinner, the quiet confessions in the kitchen. Had it all been a game to him? Pain twisted in her chest, sharp and familiar, echoing the loss she'd endured before, but she wouldn't let it show. Not here. Not to him. She met his gaze steadily, seeing the flicker of something. Guilt? Fear? Behind the steel? But it didn't soften the blow. "I'm not one of your deals, Mr. Grant," she said simply, her voice even, pushing the folder back across the desk. "I quit." No tears, no outburst, just quiet resolve as she turned and walked out, her footsteps steady on the marble floor. The elevator ride down blurred with a rush of emotions. Betrayal stinging fresh, but beneath it, a fierce pride. She'd come for stability, not this, not being bought off like a problem to solve. Bella's face flashed in her mind, grounding her. She'd find another way, as she always had. Back in her apartment later, unpacking the few things she'd left at the penthouse, the hurt settled deeper, a reminder that some walls were too high to scale. Yet, in refusing his offer, she'd reclaimed her worth, stepping into the unknown with head held high,
stronger for the scar. In Harry's world, everything is a transaction. In Olivia's, everything comes from the heart. In this battle, which side are you on? If you choose heart, leave a comment and like this story. We'll soon find out if a heart can truly heal all. The penthouse reverted to its pristine state almost overnight, every surface gleaming under the coal lights, books aligned with military precision, not a cushion out of place. Harry had called in a new service to erase any trace of disruption. Floors buffed, kitchen reset to alphabetical order, the air stripped of any lingering scents. It was order restored, the way he'd always demanded. But as he walked through the rooms that first evening alone, the silence hit differently.
It wasn't the peaceful void he'd once craved, it was oppressive, echoing back at him like an accusation. No faint aroma of vanilla cookies wafting from the oven. No sudden burst of Bella's giggles piercing the hush. The space felt larger, emptier, a tomb of his own making. He poured a scotch in the living room, sinking into the couch that now seemed too stiff, too unused. The check sat on his desk, untouched since Olivia had pushed it back, her quiet refusal burning in his memory. He'd meant it as protection, a clean severance to shield them both from complications. But staring at it now, the generous sum mocked him. Money, his ultimate tool, the thing that had built his empire and bought loyalty from afar, felt utterly powerless. It couldn't summon back the warmth she'd brought, the subtle shifts that had made his fortress feel alive. For the first time, he saw it for what it was, a crutch, not a cure. Memories crept in uninvited, the way she'd handled the investor dinner with effortless grace, turning chaos into triumph. Her firm hand during his fever, no judgment, just care. The kiss that had cracked him open, revealing a hunger for connection he'd buried deep. He'd doused that spark himself, driven by fear, and now the regret gnawed at him. The penthouse, once a sanctuary, suffocated with its perfection. He wandered to the window, city lights blurring below, a reminder of the isolation he'd chosen. What had he gained? Stability, yes, but at the cost of the only real vitality in his world. By morning, the emptiness pressed harder. Breakfast was delivered as scheduled, precise, flavorless, and he ate alone at the counter, the stool beside him glaringly vacant. A faint echo of Bella's laughter haunted him, a ghost of what could have been. Harry set his fork down, the meal unfinished, and picked up the check again. Tearing it slowly, deliberately, he felt a strange release, acknowledging that some things couldn't be transacted away. He'd extinguished the light in his life with his own hands, and the resounding silence screamed the truth. Power meant nothing without someone to share it with. The day stretched ahead, meetings looming, but for the first time, success rang hollow. Late that night, with the penthouse shrouded in shadows, Harry found himself in the rarely visited storage room at the far end of the hall. The silence had become unbearable, a constant reminder of what he'd lost. He pulled down an old leather-bound box from a high shelf, dust motes dancing in the beam of his phone's flashlight. It had been years since he'd opened it, deliberately buried like the memories it held. But tonight, the emptiness drove him here, seeking answers in the ruins of his past. He sat on the floor, the cold tile grounding him as he lifted the lid. Inside lay relics of betrayal, faded photos of him and Elena, her smile sharp even in stillness. A crumpled partnership agreement, inked promises turned to poison. A cheap locket she'd left behind, inscribed with lies. Elena had been his first real partner, in business and heart, until she'd sold company secrets to a rival, vanishing with a fortune and his trust. The anger that once boiled at these mementos now simmered to a dull ache. He traced the edges of a photo, seeing not just her deceit, but his own naivety. The way he'd let emotion blind him, building dreams on fragile ground. As he sifted through, a painful clarity emerged. To shield himself from hurt, he'd mirrored her cruelty, using calculations and cash to navigate relationships, keeping everyone at arm's length. With Olivia, he'd done the same, reducing their connection to a payout, a contract to silence the risk. The realization hit like a slow wave, twisting in his gut. He'd become the very thing that wounded him, cold, transactional, wielding money as a weapon against vulnerability. Tears pricked his eyes, unbidden and unwelcome, as he clutched the locket. How many chances had he squandered, building walls that imprisoned him? Memories of Olivia flooded in, her quiet strength during his illness, the warmth she'd infused into his sterile world. He'd pushed her away, fearing betrayal, but in doing so, he'd betrayed himself. The box felt heavier now, a mirror to his flaws. He closed it gently, the click echoing his resolve. Pain throbbed, raw and deep, but it carried a seed of change. For the first time, he saw his past not as justification for isolation, but as a cycle to break. Standing, he returned the box to its shelf, the room's chill seeping into his bones. The path ahead loomed uncertain, but facing these ghosts was the first step towards something real, redemption perhaps, if he could muster the courage. The boardroom hummed with the low buzz of executives settling in, polished mahogany table reflecting the stern faces of Grant Industries' top brass. Harry sat at the head, agenda in hand, the meeting routine as ever, quarterly reviews, projections, the machinery of empire grinding on. But today, his mind wandered to the box of ghosts he'd confronted, the self-reckoning that lingered like a bruise. He hadn't reached out to Olivia yet. The wound was too fresh, his change too nascent. Still, her absence shadowed him, a quiet motivator to prove he could be better. As discussions turned to personnel matters, a senior director, Victor Lang, a shrewd operator with a penchant for cutting remarks, leaned back, smirking over his coffee. The topic had veered to staff turnover, and Lang couldn't resist. "Speaking of changes," he drawled, voice laced with insinuation. "Heard about that housekeeper of yours, Harry? Word is she was after more than just the job." Classic gold digger move. Get close, stir up drama, cash out. Smart play if you ask me. Snickers rippled from a couple of seats, the room's air thickening with unspoken gossip. Harry felt heat rise, not from embarrassment, but a fierce protectiveness. In the past, he'd have ignored it, preserved the calm facade, let rumors die in the shadows. But today, something snapped. He slammed his palm on the table, the sharp crack silencing the room like a gunshot. Heads jerked up, eyes wide. Harry Grant didn't lose composure. "Enough," he said, voice steady but thunderous, rising to his feet. "Olivia Perry is a woman of integrity, the kind this company could use more of. She stepped up when others wouldn't, handled crises with grace, and asked nothing in return. Any whispers suggesting otherwise, stop now. I won't tolerate baseless slander in these walls. If I hear it again, there will be consequences." The words hung heavy, his gaze sweeping the table, daring challenge. Lang paled, muttering a hasty apology, the smirks vanishing as quickly as they'd appeared. The meeting stumbled forward, but the shift was palpable, respect mingled with surprise. Harry sat back, heart pounding, the public stand a first for him. He'd sacrificed his unflappable image, the calm that shielded his authority, to defend her honor. It wasn't grandstanding, it was amends, a step toward dismantling the armor that had cost him so much. As the session wrapped, whispers turned to murmurs of approval, but Harry barely noticed. In that moment, he felt lighter, the act a quiet victory over his fears. Olivia might never know, but he'd begun to earn back what he'd thrown away, one truthful stand at a time. A few days after the boardroom showdown, Harry's Aunt Evelyn arrived unannounced at the penthouse, her arrival heralded by the sharp click of heels on marble. At 65, she was the family's unofficial matriarch, wealthy, connected, with a network that spanned old money circles and boardrooms alike. She'd always treated Harry like the heir to a legacy, steering him away from anything that might tarnish the Grant name. Today, she swept in with her signature fur stole and a concerned frown, settling into the living room as if it were her domain. "Harry, darling," she began, over tea he hadn't offered, her voice honeyed but edged. "I've heard whispers. About that housekeeper of yours. Olivia, was it? People are talking. A single mother, from what I gather? It's unbecoming. You know how these things go. It could drag the family name through the mud. Best to forget her. Move on. There are suitable matches out there, women who understand our world." Harry stood by the window, the city sprawl below a blur. Her words stung, echoing the societal pressures he'd once bowed to, the expectations that had shaped his isolation. But the self-reflection from that dusty box still burned fresh, fueling a resolve he'd never voiced before. He turned, setting his cup down with deliberate calm. "Aunt Evelyn, with all due respect, Olivia isn't a scandal. She's the most genuine person I've known. Strong, kind, raising her daughter alone after loss. She's not after status. She's built her own worth." Evelyn's eyes narrowed, sipping her tea. "Oh, please. It's romantic notions like that which ruin reputations. Think of the family, your position. You can't throw it away on some domestic fling." The dismissal ignited something deep in him. He stepped closer, voice firm but steady. "Throw it away? I'd rather lose the title, the board seats, all of it, than miss the chance at a real family. Olivia and Bella, they're not beneath us. They're what we've forgotten. Warmth, laughter, resilience. Our legacy is cold without that. Social biases? They're chains I won't wear anymore. Olivia's value eclipses any pedigree." Evelyn set her cup down sharply, surprise flickering before her composure returned. "You're serious? This isn't like you, Harry." "It's exactly like the man I'm becoming," he replied, a quiet intensity in his tone. "I've hidden behind walls too long, family expectations included. If pursuing this means stepping away from the spotlight, so be it. A life with meaning beats empty prestige." She rose, gathering her things, a mix of disapproval and reluctant admiration in her gaze. "You'll regret this." "The family won't stand by idly." "Then they won't," he said simply, escorting her to the door. As it closed behind her, the penthouse felt less confining, his stand a liberation. Defying family wasn't easy. The ties ran deep, laced with shared history and obligations. But in that moment, he felt the shift, prioritizing Olivia and Bella over outdated norms, embracing vulnerability as strength. It was a sacrifice, risking alliances and status, but it carried the promise of authenticity. For the first time, his future felt his own, not dictated by ghosts or expectations. The evening settled quiet, but Harry's resolve hummed, a step closer to redemption. Harry's decision crystallized in the quiet hours after facing his aunt. The need to find Olivia. Not with grand gestures, but humbly, on her terms. He skipped the assistant, the private investigator. This had to be his effort alone. Slipping into jeans and a simple jacket, far from his tailored suits, He climbed into his rarely used sedan, leaving the luxury fleet behind. The drive to Brooklyn felt foreign, the bustling streets a world away from his elevated perch, traffic honking reminders of lives intertwined in messier ways. He parked near her old address, the neighborhood alive with everyday rhythm. Kids kicking a ball on the sidewalk, vendors calling out specials, the scent of street food mingling with autumn leaves. No map guided him. He knocked on doors, ego set aside. "Excuse me," he said to an elderly neighbor sweeping her stoop. "Do you know Olivia Perry?" "Blonde hair. Little girl named Bella?" The woman eyed him suspiciously at first, but his earnest tone softened her. "Moved a bit ago, but she works at the corner cafe now. Sweet gal, always smiling." Each inquiry chipped at his pride, the billionaire reduced to asking directions, facing curious stares and shrugs. But it grounded him, this humility, a stark contrast to his controlled empire. Finally, he spotted the cafe, a cozy spot with mismatched tables, steam fogging the windows from fresh brews. He didn't rush in. Instead, he lingered across the street, watching through the glass. There she was, behind the counter, apron tied, hair in a loose ponytail, chatting with a regular as she frothed milk. Bella sat nearby on a stool, coloring a book, her laughter bubbling up now and then. Olivia moved with that familiar grace, serving plates with a warm word, her smile genuine, unshadowed by his world. Customers lingered, drawn to her kindness, a far cry from the sterile efficiency he'd imposed. No trace of bitterness marred her. She thrived here, independent, her happiness self-made, not tethered to wealth or status. The sight pierced him, her life full without him, a quiet joy in simple routines. He'd assumed his empire could fix things, but seeing her now he understood. Entry into her world required worthiness, not riches. Regret mingled with admiration, fueling his resolve to change, to prove he could be part of that warmth. He turned away, not ready yet, but the image lingered, a beacon guiding his path forward. The cafe's bell tinkled softly as Harry pushed open the door at closing time, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods wrapping around him like a familiar embrace. The place was emptying out, a couple of stragglers nursing their last cups, the counter wiped clean. Olivia glanced up from stacking chairs, her expression shifting from polite recognition to guarded surprise. Bella had gone home with a sitter earlier, leaving the space quiet, intimate. He approached slowly, hands in pockets. No suit today, just a simple shirt, his posture stripped of authority. "Olivia," he started, voice steady but low, standing a respectful distance away. "I owe you an apology. Not for the kiss, that was real, but for what I did after, turning it into a transaction, like you were something to manage. My fear got the best of me, and I let it insult you. That was wrong." She paused, setting down a chair, her warm eyes searching his for the catch. He continued, no flourish, just honesty. "Years ago, someone I trusted betrayed me, took everything, left me questioning every connection. I built walls to protect myself, used money as a shield. But with you, I see now I was just repeating the hurt. It wasn't an excuse. It's why I pushed you away. I needed you to know that." No pleading in his tone, no demands. He met her gaze evenly, the change evident in his softened edges, the humility he'd fought to earn. "I'm not asking you to come back or forgive on the spot. Just, could I buy you a coffee tomorrow? As Harry, not Mr. Grant. A fresh start, if you'll have it." The air hung heavy for a moment, the cafe's hum fading into background. Olivia saw it then, the sincerity in his eyes. The man who'd confronted his demons, not the tycoon hiding behind deals. It touched something in her, echoing her own resilience after loss. She nodded slowly, a small smile breaking through. Okay. Coffee tomorrow. As he left, the bell chiming behind him, a quiet hope settled. It wasn't grand, it was real. A step toward healing built on truth. Weeks blurred into a gentle rhythm as Harry and Olivia started fresh. Their dates simple bridges between worlds. He showed up at her apartment one evening, sleeves rolled up, kneeling awkwardly on the rug to help Bella with her puzzle. "This piece goes here," he said softly, fumbling the edges, his usual precision giving way to laughter when Bella corrected him with a giggle. Olivia watched from the kitchen, heart warming at the sight, the tycoon trading boardrooms for block towers, his tie askew, fully present. Another afternoon found them at the park, sunlight filtering through leaves as Harry pushed Bella on the swing, her squeals filling the air. "Higher, Harry!" she demanded, and he obliged, his laughter genuine, unfiltered. When she tumbled into the grass, he scooped her up without a thought, mud smearing his expensive slacks. Olivia handed him a wipe, their fingers brushing, a spark reigniting. "You're a natural," she murmured, and he shrugged, eyes soft. "Learning as I go." Evenings turned cozy, picnics on her tiny balcony, sharing stories under string lights, Harry opening up about his lonely climbs to success, Olivia about her quiet strengths after loss. He was changing, not overnight but steadily, prioritizing them over calls, embracing the mess of family life. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on trust earned, a partnership blooming from ruins. In those moments, love felt mature, resilient, a foundation for whatever came next. The sun dipped low over the backyard of their new home, a cozy place they'd picked together, with wide windows and a garden that invited mess. No more sterile penthouse. This was lived-in warmth, toys scattered on the grass like joyful confetti. Harry knelt beside Bella's little bike, steadying the handlebars as she pedaled tentatively, her face a mix of determination and glee. "You've got it, kiddo," he encouraged softly, jogging alongside as she wobbled forward, laughter bubbling up when she found her balance. From the porch, Olivia watched, a mug of tea in hand, her smile soft and full. The scene wrapped around her heart. Harry, once so rigid, now embracing the chaos, his shirt untucked, hands dirty from the day. Bella squealed in triumph, circling back, and Harry scooped her up in a hug, their joy echoing through the yard. In that moment, Harry felt it settle. The empire he'd built was just a shell, echoing empty until now. True home wasn't in walls or wealth, but in this. The wild beauty of a child's laugh, the trust in Olivia's gaze, her hand slipping into his as she joined them. He'd been healed, not by control, but by love's gentle disorder. This was his real kingdom, warm and unbreakable. Thank you for joining Harry and Olivia on their journey to find their true home. Every story is more meaningful when it's shared. If there was a moment in this story that touched your heart, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to join us for more heartwarming stories.